Jaguars on a Hump Day Wednesday. If I told you an AFC team from the state of Florida was going to upgrade with one of the best left tackles in the NFL and one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, spend money, sign big bonuses, give away some draft compensation, you would have lost the farm thinking that it was the Jaguars, because it was not the Jaguars. It was Miami Dolphins. I'm going to tell you the ramifications of that here on Locked On Jaguars on a Wednesday.
Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, good people? I'm Tony Wiggins, your host of Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jaguars podcast. We're at your team every day, and we appreciate you making us your first listen. You can find us anywhere, on any platform, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe to the page. We ain't going to bury the lead today. So much is going on around the NFL. One has to wonder if the goodwill that was earned by Trent Baalke is gone, because all of these moves that the Jaguars made in free agency, where if I gave him a grade before today, it would have been a solid B or B minus. So I'm not going to erase that grade today. However, with other teams around the league, particularly in the AFC, that happens to be the conference where the Jaguars have to compete, are making moves, big moves, the big moves that you thought the Jaguars would make. And I think it has some draft ramifications for Jacksonville, because now it weaponizes some teams that have multiple first-round picks that are also picking in front of Jacksonville, and they have the same position of need that the Jaguars have not quite addressed, and that is the X receiver position. We're going to discuss that, the ramifications, and if this love for Trent Baalke, we'll hit that in the third segment, if this love for Trent Baalke is just gone all of a sudden, and the goodwill that he seemed to earn over the last couple of weeks by being aggressive in free agency is gone. So let's get right to it. Here's the deal. The Chiefs have traded all-pro wide receiver Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins for about 837 draft picks. Now, not really. I'm just tongue-in-cheek. But a first, a second this year, a fourth this year, a fourth, and a sixth next year. If I'm not mistaken, that's what the deal entails. Now, what does that mean for, first of all, this is the Jaguars podcast, but I will discuss the Dolphins. What does that mean for Miami after they signed Teron Armstead yesterday? It means that Miami has made a significant upgrade to their team, and they're going for their young quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, with their new first-year coach in Mike McDaniel. The parallel is Jaguars have a new first-year coach in Doug Peterson. And while they were aggressive in terms of spending and the amount of players that they went out and got the first day, it doesn't seem like they shot for the moon in terms of the guys that they could probably acquire. When guys like Tyreek Hill and Davante Adams are on the market, and we can forget about Davante. Let me make a note about this. I told people he didn't leave Green Bay because he was sick of Aaron Rodgers. He went to go play for his hometown team. He said it today. He went to go play for his hometown team, the team that he grew up rooting for. Well, they're in Las Vegas now, but they used to be in Oakland. He's from Palo Alto. And he went to play for the team that he always wanted to play for with his best friend and college teammate, Derek Carr. The Jaguars didn't have a chance in hell of getting Davante Adams, so we'll leave that one out. But you still have to shoot for it. Tyreek Hill basically chose the Miami Dolphins after the Chiefs gave him a chance to go out and look for people, to look for people who would make a trade for him. It makes what the Jaguars did with Christian Kirk and other players not look so good, because one of the guys they got too was Cedric Wilson. He's now their third receiver. That's the third receiver that we wanted here in Jacksonville, but we have Zay Jones, who I hope pans out. The problem is the Jaguars don't have a number one, and no one thinks they're going to use the very first overall pick on the number one, and everyone seems to think that it's automatic that they can trade down. That's a two-way street, that when you usually try to trade down or trade up, there are people trying to jackleg you. They're not just going to give it to you. They're trying to beat you in the deal, especially when they know you're the team that's trying to leave. So that's going to cost you something. The thought was that the Jaguars would be able to sit at 33 in the draft and grab their next big target outside receiver. Doesn't have to necessarily be a big guy, but it has to be someone who can high point the ball and play outside. For instance, the one guy who's not over 6 feet tall is Jahan Dotson, who I really, really like, who is a pure outside receiver. I think 97% of his snaps in college at Penn State were on the outside. You can have a smaller guy who's effective on the outside, especially when he's a high jump athlete who can high point the ball. Tyreek Hill is an outside receiver. Jalen Waddle will probably be used outside in Miami. T.Y. Hilton made a killing and made a living being an outside receiver at under 6 feet. Tyler Lockett is another receiver who's not a big guy. And they said they're going to play Christian Kirk at 5'11". They're going to play him outside. So it's not that Antonio Brown, outside receiver, is a Hall of Famer, at least on the field. So it's not like you just have to go out and get a big, tall guy. But when you sign two other guys that aren't very big, you do want some versatility in your room, and you want the room to look a certain way. So the Jaguars are sitting at the top of round 2. Who are some of the guys that we've mentioned in the past? We've mentioned Calvin Watson. We've mentioned George Pickens. We've mentioned maybe trading up to go after Jameson Williams. We've mentioned Chris Olave, who's 6'1". Those guys might be falling off the radar now because of where some teams are picking in the draft. I'm going to tell you what these scenarios mean and why a trade up is not necessarily something that the Jaguars are automatically going to be able to do. Everybody keeps hitting me up on social media telling me they're going to trade up, they're going to trade up. It ain't like you could just go, this ain't jail where you're just going to walk up to some dude and snatch his cornbread and say, give me your draft pick and I'll give you these. And there, you got to deal with it. It's a two-way street. And if everyone has the same idea, man, sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. I'm going to tell you in segment 2 why I think it's going to be difficult and why the Jaguars guy won't be there. I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. But first, I have to tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is absolutely off the chain, man. I've been bragging about salty caramel Built Bar for at least 2 years now. I got a new love now. I don't think I'm cheating. It is what it is, right? The thing is when you eat a Built Bar, you always feel like you're cheating because it tastes like you eat something that's unhealthy for you, but it absolutely is not. The macros of Built Bars, I told you guys to go check it out at built.com. It really, 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 when you read those macros, you're going to be thinking you got to eat something that doesn't taste well. That is absolutely not true. I have fallen in love with these puffs, man. These puffs, they're a protein-infused marshmallow. Bear with me. Listen, off the chain. So many people on our network have told me that the puffs are the best tasting Built Bar ever. And that's a high bar because that salted caramel is, and that cherry barcia is off the chain. But these puffs are very, very good. My wife loves them too. And you can get your hands on them by going to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order of Built Bars. Don't take my word for it. Figure it out for yourself. They're covered in 100% chocolate, and they're absolutely delicious, and they are very, very good for you. Make sure you head over to built.com and try them out right away. Listen, Locked On Jaguars is here every day giving you all of the information that you need, being the first listen for you every single day, and we are absolutely grateful that you join us every day and you like and subscribe, and you guys are what makes this page go. So here's the thing. If the Jaguars pick defensive end or edge rusher or an offensive line and they're unable to trade down early in the first round, I don't think Jameson Williams is going to be there, even though he's coming off of an ACL. I happen to believe also that a number of the receivers, Garrett Wilson will be long gone, Chris Olave and Jahan Dotson, two guys that teams thought might be there, or, that you'd have a chance, and even Treylon Burks, that you'd have a chance to get those guys. I think they're going to be long gone, and here's why I'll tell you that. The Jags are behind teams now in KC as well as Green Bay that have multiple first-round picks in that latter part of the first round. Because of that, I think those teams who lost all-pro wide receivers are not going to look for a one-on-one or a one-to-one or apples-to-apples trade-off because you'll never get it that way. I think they may double dip. And what I mean by double dip, you may see all of those players I mentioned go to one of those two teams, or you may see both of those teams reach out and try to get multiple receivers. Even if they aren't, the teams around them now, or anyone who had an idea that they may be able to take a receiver in the second round, a la Jacksonville, might find themselves in a quandary. And now all of these guys start moving off the board. And remember, they're not a monolith. It's not as if, okay, well, we still got one. Maybe he's not the one you want. Because if he's just a pure slot guy, he doesn't do a lot for Jacksonville to get that. They need an X wide receiver. Maybe you were looking for a certain body type. And remember something, the draft is about tendencies. Trent Baalke traditionally does not take guys who don't fit a height-weight dynamic. He just doesn't take guys that have a certain body. He believes in bigger, more physical players. The one thing that might work out for him, there's a rumor out that the Jags, and I've certainly been one who has said that the Jags were shopping Laviska Shenault. One of the teams that is rumored to be interested, and I just got this information from a credible source, is KC. It behooved them to trade Laviska to KC because it takes up a roster spot, and it might convince KC, who signed Juju Smith-Schuster, who are taking a visit from Valdez-Scantling, who played with Green Bay. At some point, they still have Mecole Hardman. At some point, you want them to run out of roster spots so they don't snatch a wide receiver in front of you, because they could also be going for an edge rusher in Kansas City because they have a needed edge, and then they have a need also in their secondary for some depth. But you want all of these teams that need wide receivers to sort of get out of your way if you're Jacksonville. And you don't want all these other teams to prompt. And I keep having people say, well, Philly has 3 first-round picks, and Philly has 3 needs for those first-round picks. They may not give up those selections as easily as it is for you to tweet that to me, that Philly might give up one of their first-round picks so the Jags can move up to take Jameson Williams. Now, I don't know when Jameson Williams is going to be ready, but after him and some of the other players that I've mentioned, there's a significant drop-off. I hope what the Chiefs decide to do is go after that kid from Memphis, Calvin Watkins III, and make him a high pick. They have shown the propensity to draft guys who aren't big. They did it with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They've done it with Mecole. They actually did it with Tyreek. Some people say that kid has some Tyreek Hill type qualities. Could they reach for him early in the first because they don't think he's going to make it? Could they go and reach for a Sky Moore, who people don't believe will get out of the middle of the second round? Or could Sky Moore now become an option for Jacksonville? I think it's imperative that the Jags do their due diligence and really, really understand what they can get and what they can't at the top of that second round. Now, one of the guys that I keep seeing in mocks, and I've mentioned this before, is Daxton Hill. Now there are teams saying that he may go a little bit higher up into the 20s, so that moves another position. The last thing you want if you're a Jaguars fan is to get in the position to draft the best player available, and all of a sudden it's at a position where you don't really need someone. Because I know I've always said take the best player available and you can't cherry pick, and I still believe that. If it's Devontae Wyatt, take him. If it's Jordan Davis, he falls to you, take him. But it is not ideal. The Jaguars have some needs that are bigger than others. It's not ideal for you to lose the leverage that you have where a whole bunch of guys fall to you and you're not equipped, or you're not ready to take the guy that's the best player who also meets the biggest need on your team at that point. So I want to be clear. I'm still about taking the absolute best player available, but hopefully that aligns with also the guy that you need the most. So you can just weaponize Trevor Lawrence. But the way Tua has been, the way they're doing it with Tua, we're going to talk about Trent Baalke, because people who had given him a little bit of a break, they're all over him again all of a sudden, is because these other teams have made these deals that, like I said in the opening, that you thought the Jaguars would be able to make. I'm going to tell you in segment 3 why Baalke can't win for losing. and it ain't that I'm mad at Jaguar fans for it because I kind of don't blame them, that Trent Baalke can't win for losing. I'll tell you what he needs. Trent Baalke needs some athletic greens. What are athletic greens? I'm going to tell you. It's a product I literally use every day. I started taking athletic greens because I needed a boost of energy and I needed my vitamins. And I hate taking those pills and all of those different supplements early in the morning. But I do want better health. I want better gut health. I want more energy, optimized immune system. But I just hated going through the whole rigmarole of standing. And usually I'm in a rush. I ain't got time to do all of that. So, what is athletic greens? Well, with one delicious scoop of athletic greens, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. And I'm going to tell you the effects that it's had on me. It kicked in about the second day, and I really felt it on the third day. I just had more energy. I just had more life. I'm 53 and I felt like I was 40. You know, that's a pretty significant bump when you need this type of energy. And the good thing is I now know I'm taking care of myself when people ask me all the time, do you take vitamins? So now the answer is absolutely yes. And probiotics, and you guys know, if you follow the podcast, I had some health scare going on inside of me recently that involved digestion, intestine, all of that stuff. And this is extremely helpful and it's also extremely healthy. So it's athletic greens. Make sure you're looking at athletic greens, Google athletic greens, and find out where you can get athletic greens. And you need to incorporate the AG1 into your life every single day. Do it and put your family and friends on it too. It's athletic greens, and you can take it when you travel to make sure you have what you need, the nutrients in your body every single day. Segment 3, Trent Baalke. Did he ever really totally get kind of exonerated by Jaguars fans? I don't know, but I can tell you what I think happened. What I think happened is it looked and felt different. So the Jaguar fans gave him a benefit of the doubt because, just like I said, and folks thought I was being facetious or evil towards the fans, but I wasn't. I'm just saying, like clockwork, the fans want things to work so bad, no matter how they feel about an individual, that eventually what they'll do is they'll come around. And as long as you show them that you're trying and it doesn't look the same, fans will come around. And I think for about 10 days, that's exactly what happened with Trent Baalke. And it appears that Doug Peterson has more of a stamp on this team than folks wanted to believe or give the benefit of the doubt that was possible with Trent Baalke. So how could things that other people do affect the Jaguars? When they're really, really super aggressive like the Raiders, and when they're really, really super aggressive in terms of not just acting, but actually who they went out and got, the people and the players that you believe were unreachable and untouchable, then it still shows you that the cachet of the franchise probably isn't where you hoped it would be. Can they salvage it before the draft? Sure, I'd give a call to find out about DK Metcalf. Would I get up off the number one pick straight up for him? Absolutely not. I probably would not do that. I would consider it, though. I would consider the second and 2/3. Yeah, I consider it. I'd consider a third and a fourth maybe for Tyler Lockett, especially if you start to look at these boards now and you start to see guys that you thought were going to be there at one point and now all of a sudden they're not there. That would probably calm the natives down and give them the feeling that Trent Baalke is still a little bit more than we thought he was going to be. But right now, I kind of get the sense based on the feeling and the temperature on social media that we're going right back to where we were prior to free agency. And that is they're still a day late and $1 short. And here's the reason why it's so important. You have to play against Buffalo. You eventually have to play and go through Miami. You may have to play and go through Denver. You may have to play and go through Oakland. You also may have to play and go through the Bengals. That's hard business. This AFC ain't playing. You may have to run through the Chargers. Hell, you got to prove that you're going to outgrow or grow at a faster pace than the Texans, who you couldn't even beat last year, and you both had rookie quarterbacks. The Colts got Matt Ryan in your own division. And I hear they're in play for Julio Jones, and that's another team that still has their first-round pick that's sitting right there in the middle of the draft, and I keep seeing people mock Drake London to them. And they got another pass rusher in Yannick Ngakoue. At some point, this isn't individual. It's not golf. It's not, you don't just have to beat the course. What's that little steeplechasing? What is that when the horse keeps jumping over the little? It's not it's not figure skating where you're going to be judged individually. There's resistance, and the resistance is all of these teams that sign and all of these other players, and that's what leads the fans to wondering, is it enough? When folks say, did they improve? I say, yeah, but they're not playing against themselves. They're not playing the 1-in-15 version of themselves. They're playing a whole bunch of other people. First of all, you got to prove that you can beat the people that you couldn't beat who didn't improve. So there's a line that you have to toe here. Do you allow what other people have done to dictate whether or not you've improved? I don't think so. But you can wonder if the things that you've done are enough, or were you aggressive enough? Did you dare to dream that you could ever possibly even get Tyreek Hill? Did you even make a phone call? I think the Jaguars, it would behoove them to put out a statement that says, we called about Tyreek, we called about Devontae, those guys had other plans. At least then the fans around here will absolutely know that the Jaguars did their due diligence. I don't even know if they called about Amari Cooper. That's another one. And I ain't even talked about Cleveland. And at some point, they're going to have their quarterback throwing to people. I didn't even mention them, right? Growing is good. But you're not the only one fertilizing yourself, and you're not the only one growing. When you're behind, you have to grow at a faster pace than these other teams, or you'll get left behind. You won't get left behind on the Locked On NFL podcast. I got one out today with James Rapine where we're talking about all of the things. We're talking about the effect Matt Ryan had on the Colts and their ability to win the division. Make sure you follow that Locked On podcast on YouTube and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Check out the Locked On NFL YouTube page. Also, for this draft, now that this has happened, you guys got to tap into the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Eric Crocker and Ryan Tracy, because now that these mock drafts have changed because players are moving around and needs have changed, we got to all adjust our draft, and you got to always listen to the guys that cover it. And those two guys on the Locked On NFL Draft Daily podcast give you all the information you need from around the NFL. Until tomorrow, we'll see if anything else happens. Maybe LaVisca does get moved and gets traded. Here's what I heard. I heard it's the Patriots. I heard it's the Raiders. And now another team is the Chiefs. They said 3 or 4 teams. Those are 3. I don't know who the 4th team could be. But until we find out, we'll see if the Jaguars are able to move on from LaVisca Chenault and start resetting that wide receiver room and maybe do some mock draft to see who actually does fall to us. Until then, you guys continue to take care of each other, and I will see you guys tomorrow here, same time,